In high school, I fell in love with someone. His family was wealthy, while mine could barely make ends meet. To buy him a graduation gift, I took a part-time job at a karaoke bar. On his birthday, I overheard his friends laughing loudly outside the private room. A belt as a gift for a boy? Clara, the #1 nerd, must want to control Miguel below the belt. A little kinky, isn't it? Miguel spun the belt in his hand and replied with a mocking smile, God knows where Clara found this cheap piece of junk. I wore it once and got a rash. I wouldn't even use it as a collar for my dog. After that, he threw the belt away and I left town. But I later heard Miguel went crazy trying to find me. Chapter 1. When I walked through the door, Miguel froze for a moment. The boy teasing him grew uncomfortable, coughed, and raised his juice to hide his expression. My eyes fell on the belt lying on the table. The leather was cracked, the edges bore bite marks clearly from a dog. It looked cheap and worn out. It hadn't been expensive, only about 800 yuan, but it was my entire semester's budget. I had saved for months and worked extra shifts at KTV after graduation just to buy it for Miguel before college started. Silently, I set the fruit tray on the table, picked up the belt, and without looking at him, whispered, If you didn't like it, you could have just returned it. Sorry for bothering you. I didn't look at his face. I just clenched the belt tightly and walked out of the room, humiliated. I stood outside for a while. Soon, laughter and chatter returned from inside. A staff member passed by, saw me lost in thought, and reminded me to hurry with the cleaning. Inside, I told myself, Look, Clara, you are never part of his world. This is the last time you try to cross that line. Don't do it again. From that day on, I decided never to bother Miguel again. But I hadn't expected to leave in that way. After finishing at KTV, I went to the market. From afar, I saw my mother at her stall cleaning fish. I went closer and quietly helped her weigh the goods and collect money. At closing time, she bought a pound of pork belly, the marbled kind we could rarely afford. Instinctively, I tried to stop her and pointed to a cheaper cut. Mom, that one's fine. She took my hand rough but warm and said, Clara, you must be hungry. Tonight I'll make braised pork for you. We went home to our small apartment of barely 40 square meters. It was the place where my mother and I leaned on each other. The braised pork she made was rich and fragrant, full of spices. I ate rice as if I hadn't had food in days. After washing the dishes, she pulled out an envelope stuffed with money. I was confused. Gently, she tucked a strand of hair behind my ear and said, I spoke with your uncle. You'll go to university there. He can keep an eye on you. But classes won't start for another 15 days, leave earlier. Buy a ticket for tomorrow morning. I have to open the stall, I won't be able to see you off. Chapter 2. The next morning, I dragged my suitcase while waiting for the bus, clutching the envelope with growing anxiety. People were boarding one by one. The driver kept hurrying us, but I couldn't hear a thing. Suddenly, I turned around and ran back home. No one was there. I rifled through drawers and shelves until, beneath a pile of electricity and water bills, I found a medical report, terminal kidney failure. It felt like lightning struck me. I collapsed to the floor. I should have noticed earlier Mom was going to the bathroom more often and twice nearly fainted from weakness. She said she was just tired. And me? What was I doing then? Running around working just to buy Miguel a gift. I slapped myself over and over, blaming myself for not paying enough attention to her. I called the hospital. A nurse answered hurriedly. We finally managed to reach a family member. Please come quickly. The patient's condition is critical. When I arrived, the doctor explained that unless a compatible donor was found, only dialysis remained, and it would cost around 100,000 yuan a year. Trembling, I pulled out the envelope. We have money. Please give my mother dialysis. With red eyes, my mother gripped my hand tightly, clinging to the envelope without being able to say a word. I couldn't stop crying. I won't go to university. I'll work and earn money. I'll cure you, I promise. It's just a kidney transplant.
Mom, don't leave me.
I beg you. In the end, I could barely speak through my tears. For as long as I can remember, I never had a father. My mother raised me alone. I was her everything. As a naive child, I once complained about why she gave birth to me when we were so poor. I even blamed her for why others had fathers and I didn't. Later, I understood how hard life was for her. I worked hard at school and finally got into a good university. I just had to wait a few more years, and I could pull her out of the mud we were living in. But why now? Why at this moment? After dialysis, Mom seemed even weaker. I helped her home and curled up in her arms, thinking I would find more jobs the next day. Soon, I fell asleep. When I woke up, she was gone.
Panic seized me.
I rushed out and bumped into a policeman. "Are you Clara? Your mother fell from a cliff. Come with us to identify the body." A chill spread through my whole body. It was dawn. Mechanically, I got up, went to the bathroom to brush my teeth, foam still in my mouth, turned my head and shouted, "Mom, what are we having for breakfast today?" No one answered. I replied to myself as if nothing was wrong.
Oatmeal.
"Cut me some cucumber, okay? I want to eat those pickled cucumbers you used to make." 7 years have passed. Mom is no longer here, but I still feel her beside me. I dream of her constantly. At night, we're together, and when I wake up, I go to work. Sometimes I wonder if the day is the dream and the night with her is the real life. I once told this to a doctor. He sighed, wrote something on a piece of paper, and finally gave me the diagnosis: severe depression. He told me I needed treatment. I nodded without thinking. As soon as I left the hospital, I tossed the pills into the trash, just like I had thrown away that belt 7 years ago. I regret it every single day. If I hadn't been so obsessed with Miguel, maybe I would have noticed my mother's illness in time. If I had saved the money from that belt, I might have paid for one more dialysis. Then maybe my mother wouldn't have taken her own life. Sometimes I hallucinate. My old classmates point at me, calling me a whore. The villagers whisper that I'm an ungrateful daughter. Miguel stands there holding his dog's leash, smirking, while the dog grips a belt in its mouth. I swat them away, screaming, "No, no, I'm not just anyone. I loved my mother." A shattering sound, the hallucination breaks. My toothbrush had struck the mirror, foam splattering everywhere. I touched my reflection. Thin, shadowed, exhausted. I miss my mom so much. I decided to go find her. Chapter 3. The train roared forward. I sat by the window, listening to the chaos on board: children crying, old people shouting, the food vendor calling out hot lunches. That noise alone made me feel less lonely. It had been so long since I'd been in such a lively place. "Sweetheart, is this seat taken?" I looked up. It was a woman with a high bun, flawless makeup, elegantly dressed but radiating boundless energy. I shook my head. She plopped down beside me. "Oh, finally, a free seat. I'm exhausted. Are you going to City C too?" "Yes." "What a coincidence." "Me too. My friends already traveled there, but I got delayed and missed the fast train tickets. This trip has drained me. My legs can't take it anymore. Want some chicken wings? They're boneless. My son made them. Do you like sweets? I have homemade strawberry preserves from my hometown. Clara, you're dressed too lightly. Here, wear this faux mink scarf. Put it on. Come, oh no, you look lovely." When I said goodbye to her at the station, her name was Sandra. I realized it had been years since I felt that kind of warmth inside. In these 25 years, I had never experienced such direct and genuine kindness. For a moment, I thought, maybe if I went out more, if I saw more of the world and its people, I could stop being trapped in the shadows of my past. Until a familiar male voice suddenly called out in surprise, "Clara? Is that really you?" I looked up. It was Leo, the boy who, 7 years ago in that private room, had sneered that I was playing dirty. A shiver ran through my body. Once again, I felt all those accusing stares. Clara, what a whore. Chapter 4. Leo asked for my contact. He said there would be a class reunion in a few days, and that under no circumstances could I miss it. I answered indifferently. Maybe I'd go if I was still around by then. I returned to the house I once shared with my mom. 7 years had passed, and dust covered everything. It was in ruins. I cleaned from morning until dark, then collapsed onto the bed, doing nothing but staring at the ceiling, imagining myself in my mother's arms, holding each other just like 7 years ago. The phone vibrated nonstop. Annoyed by the noise, I grabbed it and saw Leo had added me to the class group chat. Leo, welcome our genius Clara. Messages flooded in. Nice one, Leo. You found the missing girl. Clara?
Who's that?
The class brainiac. She chased Miguel for a while. The one who gave Miguel a dog collar? Ha ha ha. She still hasn't gotten over it? Poor Miguel. How embarrassing. A girl that clingy. She should have some dignity. I read the messages with cold detachment. In my youth, I never thought expressing one's feelings was shameful. That's why I never hid mine. But I never imagined that, to others, it looked pathetic. The words on the screen felt alive. In my blurred vision, I saw Miguel in the center of the group, his dog at his side, smirking. Clara, you're not even worthy of being a dog. I couldn't breathe. What was I waiting for? Why not go to my mother right now? Go to her. Stay with her. Never be apart again. A bell rang. I snapped back. The kitchen knife had nicked my skin. I dropped it. Not here. Not now. I answered the call. A bright, energetic voice came through. Clara, what are you doing? I just met a fellow townsman. Thanks for giving me directions. It's obvious you're from here. These streets are nothing like my hometown. When I hung up, I was already sitting on the bed. The knife was gone from my hand. The blood on my wrist had dried. The group chat was still buzzing nonstop. Leo, as the admin, had posted the reunion details. I checked the address. It was in the same direction as the cemetery. Fine. I'll go. I'll see them. It will be like a final farewell to this world. Chapter 5. When I arrived, the private room was already full. The moment I walked in, laughter and conversation stopped abruptly. Clearly, I was an intruder. I looked around. Only 2 seats remained at the head of the table, and obviously, they weren't for me. Leo, however, was unusually considerate. He pulled out the chair beside him. Clara, sit here. I hadn't even moved when someone complained. What are you doing? That's seats for Miguel. If she sits there, it'll only make him uncomfortable. The speaker was Elise. Back in high school, she had openly confessed to Miguel. She was always bold, rebellious, and I had never liked her. Elise looked at me with a mocking smile. Clara, you really came? Nobody saved you a seat. If you had any sense, you'd leave. Miguel will be here soon, and you'll only ruin his appetite. How awkward would that be? Someone at the table tried to mediate. You're not Miguel. How can you know how he feels? It's been years. We were all classmates. Just let it go. Elise clicked her tongue and frowned. Did I say anything untrue? Anyone would be annoyed by unwanted attention. Enough. Who said Miguel hates Clara? Miguel? Elise burst out laughing as if she had heard the funniest joke. Doesn't hate her? What? Does he like her then? Does he like her dog collar gift? Or her stink of fish? Just the thought makes me want to vomit. Oh, right. So our genius Claire, what are you doing now? Still selling fish at the market with your mom? No wonder no one has seen you in years. We don't go to markets to find people, you know. That's enough. You're crossing the line. I stood at the doorway, deeply regretting ever coming. Elise was right. No one here wanted me. I was only a nuisance. I opened my mouth to say something but found no meaning. What was the point of speaking? Sorry for interrupting. I opened the door and walked out. From a distance, I faintly heard Leo's angry voice. Elise, are you insane? Do you know how hard it was for me to convince her to come? Do you have any idea what Leo caught up to me? Clara, wait. But this time, I ignored him. I told the taxi driver to take me to the cemetery, then pulled out my phone and left the class group. Chapter 6. I sat in front of my mother's grave for a long time. Before coming, I had so much I wanted to tell her, but staring at the photo on the tombstone, it felt like something stuck in my throat, blocking every word. It didn't matter soon. I would see her again. By the time it grew dark, I had already descended the mountain. In the village, there's no nightlife. Everything was silent. I climbed step by step, the trees blocking the moonlight, the path barely visible. I struggled forward, wondering if, back then, my mother had also been unable to see the road ahead of her. The night wind howled. At the edge of the cliff, there was nothing but darkness below. I stood on the mountain's peak for a moment, then jumped. But I didn't fall. Out of nowhere, a boy appeared, grabbing my hand as he shouted, "Help!" A girl fell from the mountain. I can't hold on much longer. "Hold tight, kid, I'm coming," another voice answered. In an instant, several more boys arrived, and together, with hands and arms pulling, they dragged me back up. Sitting on the ground, I was still dazed. They surrounded me, worried. "Are you all right, miss? Are you hurt? Why don't you speak? Were you so scared you went into shock? Come on, say something already." I came back to myself, staring at their concerned faces, but I couldn't bring myself to say I had been trying to end my life. So I went along with their story, saying I had fallen by accident, and thanked them. The one who saved me said his name was Robin. When he introduced himself, he blushed and muttered that it was all his mother's fault for insisting on giving him such a girly name. The other three laughed at him, teasing as they joked among themselves. They said it was too dark to let me walk alone, and insisted on escorting me home. I had no choice but to abandon my original plan. When we finally neared my house, they waved goodbye. Watching their backs fade into the night, I realized I hadn't even asked for their contacts. At the very least, I should have invited them for a meal, I sighed. My memory was getting worse and worse. Slowly, I walked home. As I reached the door, I saw a figure standing there. It was so dark I couldn't make out who it was. "Clara," he called me, in an elegant, steady voice, the same tone that had haunted my nightmares and hallucinations all these years. It was Miguel. In our village, there was no high school. Most people dropped out before finishing basic education. Only a few managed to complete it, and even fewer went on to secondary school. My mother had always insisted I study. She said that for someone like me, with our humble background, education was the only way to change my fate. After the final exam, I was admitted to a private school with excellent grades. It was a prestigious school, with good teachers and students from wealthy families. With our situation, normally I never could have enrolled. But each year, the school accepted a few promising students on scholarship to boost their university admission rates. Not only was tuition waived, but they also provided free lodging and meals. At the very start of my first year, I had already heard about the famous Miguel. For one reason, he was incredibly handsome. And what was rare was that he also came from a well-off family. Every day, I heard the girls in class gossip about him. Sometimes, when passing the basketball court, I'd hear them cheer his name. And yes, he really was striking. Tall, fair-skinned, with sharp features and a dazzling smile filled with the arrogant pride of youth. Whenever he scored a point, the girls' cheers and applause would erupt like waves. He and I were not from the same world. I knew that better than anyone. That's why I always kept myself away from such noise. But in our last year, classes were reshuffled, and I was assigned the seat next to him. The teacher privately told me that Miguel's mother was part of the school board, and she herself had proposed the scholarship program for poor students. Now it was my turn to repay the favor. So, besides studying, I had another task, to tutor Miguel. I hated explaining problems, but he always had countless questions, even about the most basic exercises. Especially when he twirled his pen between his fingers and said with that ambiguous smile, "Song, I don't get any of this." It was hard for me to stay patient. Sometimes, I pretended I needed to go to the bathroom or fetch water, just to escape his childish questions. And every time I left, my seat would immediately be filled by others crowding around Miguel, chatting endlessly. "What's up with Miguel lately? He actually wants to study? That's not like him. Don't tell me he likes the nerdy girl? What are you talking about? Miguel's girlfriends are always gorgeous, and Clara, she's so plain." Everyone burst out laughing at that. "Well, what's so bad about switching from caviar to pickled rice, right, Miguel?" "Come on," Miguel said with his usual elegant, arrogant laugh. "Like Clara? Are you kidding? Am I blind?" At that very moment, I was standing just outside the door, an old dented thermos in my hand. I waited for the bell to ring before returning to my seat, silently gathering the gum wrappers they had left on my desk, my heart weighed down with insecurity as I struggled to calm myself so my red eyes wouldn't be noticed. Chapter 7. After that, they mocked me several more times, and soon everyone began to speculate that I had a crush on Miguel. The reason? Because I was always buried in my books, and now, all of a sudden, I was explaining exercises to him. Even Elise came to warn me, don't think that just because you sit next to Miguel you have a chance. Look at yourself. Who do you think you are? Someone like you should stay far away from swans. After saying that, she seemed to remember something and laughed with contempt. With her delicate hand, she covered her nose and fanned herself. Do you smell that? You reek of rotten fish. I didn't answer. I simply became even more reluctant to speak to Miguel. Every day I prayed they would change the seating arrangement soon. But heaven does not listen to those who beg. A week later, the desks were rearranged, but my seatmate was still the same. I consoled myself by saying there were only a few months left until the university entrance exam. I just had to endure a little longer. To distance myself from the center of gossip, every time classes ended, I went out to the courtyard with my English dictionary to memorize vocabulary. I did everything I could to avoid contact with Miguel. Maybe my rejection was so obvious that he never asked me anything again. Even though we still sat together, days could pass without us exchanging a single word. For my part, I was grateful. Sometimes I saw him around campus. He was always surrounded by friends or walking with a pretty girl by his side. Rumor had it she was his new girlfriend. Whenever that happened, I lowered my head and hurried past as if I hadn't seen him. Chapter 8. There were 170 days left until the entrance exam when something happened. Elise lost her watch. She cried desperately to the teacher, saying it had been a gift from a relative abroad and that it was worth more than 50,000 yuan. At first, it had nothing to do with me until Elise pointed at me, furiously demanding I return her watch. But I had never even seen it. Of course, I couldn't give it back. That only enraged her more. You're the poorest one in the class. Even if your mother sold fish her entire life, she couldn't afford this watch. If it wasn't you, then who? I calmly explained that I didn't even know how much the watch was worth. How could I have stolen it? But she refused to listen. She was convinced I was the thief. I asked the teacher to call the police. But regardless of who had taken it, the mere presence of the police would tarnish the school's reputation. The matter stalled. The teacher and some classmates comforted Elise quietly while I stood alone, without support. Elise searched my backpack and my dorm locker thoroughly, but didn't find her watch. The classroom entrance was crowded with curious onlookers who didn't know what was happening. Elise, acting self-righteous, shouted, "Clara stole my watch and won't give it back." I couldn't hold back anymore. Do you have a brain, Elise? What proof do you have that it was me? You've already checked my things and found nothing. Is accusing without evidence what they teach you at home? Elise knew I was right, but she had lost something valuable and didn't want to admit she had been careless. She needed someone to take her anger out on. At that moment, my poverty became my original sin. If it wasn't you, then who? Who doesn't check the time during exams? Everyone has a watch except you. It must have been you. If it's not in your bag or locker, then you must be hiding it on you. Yes, you're carrying it for sure. After saying that, she tried to pull off my clothes. I couldn't allow myself to be stripped in front of everyone, so of course I resisted. The teacher and some classmates intervened and pushed her away. Are you so sure it was theft? What if you simply lost it yourself? Even in the chaos, Miguel's voice was calm and elegant. With a faint smile and narrowed eyes, he said, "Teacher, this is very unfair to Clara. This school has never had a theft before. On the other hand, Elise is well known for constantly losing her things. Why don't you check her bag and locker first?" Elise's face turned red. She didn't dare contradict Miguel. Under the teacher's supervision, along with some classmates, she checked her belongings and finally, the watch was found under her pillow. The spectacle finally ended, but in the struggle my glasses had fallen to the floor, my hair was a mess, and with my 4 diopters of myopia, I couldn't see a thing. I nearly fell down the stairs. Miguel caught me with one hand while handing me my glasses with the other. As I fixed my hair, I thanked him. He stayed silent for a moment, then said, "Clara, you're very beautiful."
What?
I hadn't heard clearly. Squinting, I lifted my head in confusion, accidentally bumping into his chin. He groaned, covering his jaw. "Nothing. Nothing. Is your head made of iron?" Seeing him like that made me laugh uncontrollably. He let out a helpless laugh as well. That sunset was beautiful. The light fell across his youthful smile, illuminating my heart too. From then on, I no longer refused to explain exercises to him. Sometimes I even prepared key point notes just for him. People still made jokes about me, but he only answered with a quiet smile and said nothing. During those days, he was very kind to me. He always brought me sweets and snacks, saying they were my payment for tutoring. He never spent time with any other girl again. More than once, I overheard Leo teasing him, asking if he had finally settled down. Miguel would reply with an ambiguous smile, "Yes, I've seen a girl who is both pretty and smart." Leo laughed exaggeratedly. "Who? Her last name isn't Song, is it?" Miguel didn't answer, would just shout at him playfully to go away, and then returned to studying the notes I had prepared. I sat quietly beside him, writing nonstop with a calm expression, but inside I was in complete turmoil. I even began to think that maybe he liked me. That was the happiest time of my life. Later, I learned his birthday was just half a month after the final exam. I started saving long before then. After the exams, I took a part-time job at a karaoke bar all just to buy him that belt. But in the end, I realized it had all been my own illusion. It was nothing but unrequited love. All the shame and humiliation were things I had brought upon myself. Miguel was never to blame. Chapter 9. After 7 years, I saw the boy I had once secretly liked, but my heart no longer trembled the way it used to. I stood there in silence, not understanding why Miguel was at my doorstep. This time, I was no longer naive enough to believe he had come for me. "Clara, where did you go?" His voice was no longer steady, it carried restraint and pain. "I went to the mountain." "I'm asking you, where have you been all these years?" I couldn't understand why it mattered to him. What did it have to do with me? 7 years without seeing each other, and now he appeared, speaking with absurd dramatics. I didn't want to listen. I took out my key to open the door. When I tried to close it, he pushed his arm in to stop me. I couldn't hold back the force, and the iron door slammed against him. He couldn't help letting out a pained groan. "I'm sorry, are you okay?" My tone was cold, without much sincerity. "Really, who puts their arm in the way when someone is clearly closing a door?" "I'm fine," he answered, pulling back his hand and giving me a smile. "I'm glad." I nodded and shut the door. Shortly after, the knocking began. I lay down, drained inside and out, unwilling to move. The pounding was relentless, noisy, grating on my nerves. I grabbed the first thing I could reach and threw it. With a loud bang, silence returned. I slept peacefully. At 5 in the morning, I woke up. Maybe I had been too exhausted, because I hadn't dreamed not even of my mother.
I sat on the bed, dazed.
My plan to jump off the cliff had clearly failed. I would have to think of another method, until the burning in my stomach became unbearable and I remembered I hadn't eaten the day before. I sighed quietly. Why do people have to eat? Such a bother. When I stepped outside, I bumped into someone. Holding my head, I muttered, "Sorry. Are you all right?" I looked up and instinctively stepped back. After 7 years, Miguel was still as handsome as ever. But now, in addition to success, he carried a mature, steady air. He held 2 breakfasts in his hands and smiled. "Can I come in? I brought you something to eat." The smell of food weakened my resistance. I stepped aside to let him in. We sat at the table. While I devoured the meal, he watched and couldn't help but chuckle softly. "Eat slower." Saying this, he reached out to wipe the corner of my lips. After years of being haunted by hallucinations, my reaction was pure fear. My body acted before my mind. I dropped the food, shot up from my seat, and stumbled backward. "Don't touch me." The chair screeched harshly across the floor, then a deep silence followed. Miguel pressed his lips together, his expression pained. "I only wanted to wipe your mouth." Forcing myself to calm down, I lowered my eyes. "Thank you. I'm done eating. You can go now." "Clara, can we talk?" "Talk about what?" "About why you left without saying anything, where you've been all these years, if you're okay, and why you never came back to find me." I faked a smile. "Obviously, I went to study, then worked. I was busy. I didn't have time to return." "You're lying." Miguel stared at me intently, his eyes sharp, as if I were the one who had wronged him. I stayed silent. What was the point of continuing? I mocked him. "Miguel, why act like the victim? Are you going to tell me you loved me and waited 7 years? You were the one who said, I wasn't worthy. I looked him straight in the eyes, drawing out those last words slowly. Miguel looked as if he wanted to speak, but I cut him off. You were the one who said the gift I worked so hard to buy wasn't even worthy of being your dog's collar. Do you think I'm some pathetic girl with no dignity who would keep following you even after being humiliated? Why didn't I come back? Because I hate you, Miguel. 7 years of repressed pain and humiliation exploded in that instant. I glared at him with cruelty. I hate you. You're the most false and cruel person I've ever known. Just the sight of you makes me sick. Miguel was devastated. He remembered those very words. If he had known that his childish pride would cost him the love of his life for 7 years, he would never have said them. The only words he could manage were, I'm sorry, before leaving in defeat. I thought I had been clear enough, but that afternoon he returned. The rain poured heavily. He stood soaked outside my door. The moment I opened it, he pulled me into a tight embrace. Clara, I'm sorry. I was an idiot. I should never have said such cruel things. I was too proud, too stubborn to admit I liked you. Since the day you left, I've regretted it. I've asked myself 1,000 times why I didn't run after you, why I waited 7 years. Forgive me. I know you're sick. I know your mother is gone. But I'll be with you. Don't leave anymore, please. I looked at him without expression. The boy who had once been so arrogant was now crying before me, declaring his love with desperation. It struck me as ironic. Couldn't admit he liked me? He had always had so many girlfriends. He never considered me his equal. And now he came with this melodrama. Clara, come with me. I'll take you to the hospital. I'll cure you. Miguel looked at me with tenderness, as if he were speaking to the most precious treasure in the world. I didn't react. I let him take me to a private clinic. They ran some tests. While he spoke with the doctor, I sat outside, distracted. Soon after, he came out with the results. He tried to sound casual. Let's go home. I didn't ask. I already knew what they said. Depression, suicidal tendencies. His expression revealed everything. He brought me to a Placia 3-bedroom apartment, warm and cozy. Inside, there was a little dog. The moment I entered, it began jumping around me. I crouched down, and impatiently, it leapt into my lap to lick me. I had never seen such an enthusiastic creature. I didn't dare push it away too hard, afraid it might fall, so I let its tongue cover me. Miguel laughed as he scooped it up, but the puppy squirmed so much it tumbled from his arms and landed face first. I hurried to pick it up. It shook its head and came back to lick me again. This time, even Miguel didn't dare move, it just laughed. He's smart. He knows who to stay with if he wants to eat meat. He stroked the puppy's chin tenderly. When I'm not here, take good care of Mom. Mom, that word touched me. I lowered my head and kissed the tiny creature in my arms. Miguel watched me smiling, then suddenly pulled me close with the puppy between us, burying his face in my neck. Clara, this is your home from now on. I'll always be with you. I only ask one thing, that you recover soon. I know I made mistakes. You can yell at me, hit me, do whatever you want. Just don't disappear from me again. I felt warmth and dampness on my neck, his tears soaking through my clothes. I sighed. All right. If living can make you happy, then I'll live. Chapter 10. I stayed there. Miguel had a lot of work, but still insisted on having dinner with me every night. I followed his instructions. I ate on time. I went to the hospital for checkups. I thought life would continue quietly like that, until Miguel's mother came looking for me. She looked elegant and refined, but her expression was haughty, her eyes full of judgment and scrutiny. At that moment, I was in pajamas, the little dog curled up in my arms. Her words were even crueler than Miguel's had ever been. I just came to see what kind of woman Miguel has hidden away. My son is excellent in every way, except he likes to have too much fun. Be it actresses or models, I've always let him play around. In the end, I'm the one cleaning up his mess. In 2 months, Miguel is getting married. Since he can't appear in person, if you have any dignity, take this money and leave. If not, don't blame me for being harsh. Hearing her, I finally felt my heart settle. Miguel had acted so well these days that I almost let myself be deceived again. Luckily, I didn't. Otherwise, it would have been yet another humiliation. I didn't take the card she offered. I just smiled and nodded. I understand. I'll leave right now. I had nothing of my own in that apartment. I dressed in the same clothes I had arrived in. I hesitated for a moment, but in the end, I took the puppy with me. I figured it was my payment for those days of pretense. I doubted Miguel would complain. I walked aimlessly through the streets, not knowing where to go. The puppy rested quietly in my arms, warm and alive. I had already quit my old job. After thinking for a while, I decided to go to the city where Sandra lived. She had said that place was full of warmth. I didn't know if I could ever feel that, but I wanted to try. Chapter 11. In Beijing, I quickly found work and a place to stay. Sandra had been right. Most people here were kind. According to my coworkers, here, words don't fall to the ground. I didn't quite understand what that meant, but it sounded impressive. Even if I didn't know how to live up to it, I nodded earnestly whenever they said it. Sometimes, my serious responses made the women in the office laugh uncontrollably. Occasionally, they would ruffle my hair, saying, "Clara, you're so cute." I made some friends. They often dragged me out to eat. At the table, they would complain loudly about capitalists, drink until their faces turned red, and slur their words. Then one of the girls would tap them, reminding them to lower their voices. In the end, the loudest one would get up resignedly to pay the bill, and afterward the rest would quietly transfer their share, without saying a word. Of course, not everything was harmonious. For example, right now at the next table, a fight broke out thanks to alcohol. I saw a bottle flying straight toward me, but I couldn't dodge. I closed my eyes, waiting for the impact. But it never came. When I opened them, I saw a tall figure in front of me, shielding me. "Damn, that hurt. Don't you have any manners?" "What a disgrace for Beijing," he growled. Robin kicked the bottle aside and pulled me out of harm's way. "Hi, it's you. What are you doing here?" "I'm working in this city. Are you all right?" The police soon arrived and took the troublemakers away. I wanted to take Robin to the hospital, but he refused firmly. "It's nothing. A little iodine from the pharmacy will do." I had no choice but to say goodbye to my coworkers and go find a pharmacy. In a small nearby park, I began to treat his wounds. Robin lifted his shirt, and I froze. Though he looked slim, his body was well built, with strong arms and defined abs. I stood paralyzed, while he, slightly embarrassed, tried to pull his shirt back down. But I held it in place without a word and started disinfecting him. Outwardly, I kept a serious face, but inside, I cursed myself. How could I be drooling like a teenager? This time, I didn't forget to ask Robin for his number. We exchanged phone numbers and we chat. When we parted, he insisted on walking me home. I couldn't refuse, so I accepted. When we reached the entrance of my building, Robin let out a surprised "Hey." I looked up confused. "I live right across the street." "What a coincidence," Robin said with delight. I followed his finger. Sure enough, the entrances of our buildings faced each other, separated only by a narrow street. I was just thinking about how curious fate could be when a woman stepped out of the building across the street. She saw me and froze, then her face lit up with joy. "Clara, what are you doing here?" Robin heard her voice and turned. "Mom?" Sandra looked at Robin's back, stunned as well. "Son." Chapter 12. Sometimes, you simply cannot deny how strange fate is. Sandra was delighted to learn that I had settled in Beijing. She often invited me to dinner at her home. Over time, I grew closer to Robin. That evening, when I returned from work, I found someone waiting at my door. It was Miguel, whom I hadn't seen in more than 2 months. Since that time he had cried and begged for forgiveness, I had already released all that pain. To be honest, he had not been entirely at fault either. Now I could speak to him lightly. "It's been a long time." Miguel looked visibly thinner, his face worn and exhausted. Clearly, he had not had it easy. "A long time indeed, Clara. Have you been well?" I asked calmly, smiling. "Pretty well," I answered myself. He forced a bitter smile.
"I'm sorry.
"I promised I would take care of you. I never imagined my mother would drive you away. It doesn't matter." I cut him off. "Miguel, you don't have to apologize. You didn't do anything wrong." He frowned and, after a moment, reached to brush a strand of hair from my face. Come back with me. I stepped back to avoid his touch, smiling faintly. And your fiancé? Miguel looked away. That was arranged by my family. I'll handle it. And your mother? She doesn't want me. That doesn't matter. Once she knows you better, she'll change her mind. She'll see her a good girl, she won't. I interrupted, staring straight into his eyes, giving him no chance to escape. Your mother doesn't dislike me for who I am. She despises what I represent. It's not that I'm not a good girl. I am. I always have been. But you didn't value me back then either. You weren't even able to admit you liked me. Miguel answered firmly. I've already admitted it. I know I was wrong. Now, I could shout to the whole world that I love you. But I don't love you anymore. Miguel, I stopped loving you long ago. I let out a long sigh. At last, I had said it. Miguel looked at me in disbelief, whispering, That can't be true. Why not? I admit that once I felt something for you, but 7 years have passed. Time erases everything, especially when so much pain stood between us. Miguel, you didn't love me that deeply either. You're only clinging to the regrets of youth. It was a mistake you couldn't handle, and now you carry it like a thorn in your heart. But all these years without me you still lived well, didn't you? You had girlfriends, didn't you? I shook my head softly. Stop hurting yourself. From now on, we each go our own way. I walked past him and returned home. The little dog greeted me, wagging its head, and I hugged it tightly. I never saw Miguel again. Only sometimes, flowers would arrive at the office. The card would always read, Love is lasting companionship. I will fix everything. When that moment comes, I hope you will give me a chance to win you back. I will always wait for you. Miguel. I handed the flowers to my colleagues, packed my things, and went home. Robin was waiting outside the office, his ears flushed red as he told me his mother had invited me to dinner that night. I got into his car, smiling. No one can predict the future, but whether it is good or bad, I will accept it calmly. I only know one thing. I will never again place all my emotions or hopes on another person. Up above, my mother is watching me. And I know that all she ever wanted was for me to be happy.